Youth sports referees of Reddit. What is the craziest parent you've had to deal with on the field? I've posted this before, but it's worth telling again. When I was 16, I was umpiring the championship game of the baseball league for 9-10-year-olds in my city with a friend of mine. The team in the field is up by 1 in the last inning and there are 2 outs with the bases loaded. Parents are screaming in excitement. The batter smacks a line drive that falls in front of the right fielder. The runner on third scored easily and the runner that was on second is trying to score as well. The throw from the right fielder is way off, but there's one problem. The second kid never touched home plate. He stepped right over it. So while the team that thinks they just won is celebrating, the catcher picks the ball up and tags the runner who missed home plate. I called him out. The parents went crazy, cursing at me at the top of their lungs in front of their kids and even going as low as throwing stuff at me. It was pretty terrible. Turns out one of the parents was recording the game and between innings he showed me what he had recorded. I was right. The kid was never even close to touching the plate. The team that thought they had won ended up losing in 8 innings. He showed the video to the rest of the parents and a few of the people slipped me some extra money after the game for treating me so poorly. However, one parent did confront me in the parking lot and tried to fight me until he was dragged away by his wife. Too long. Didn't read. 9-10-year-old baseball is serious business. I was reffing a 10 and under soccer game. Again 10 years old or younger. There was this one larger kid who was being physically aggressive and knocking other kids down to get the ball. I gave a free kick to the other team after this happened. I took a knee to explain to the kid that you cannot use your hands to fight for the ball. Well, this kid's dad just loses it, shouting out that I'm a wuss. This kid is doing nothing wrong. Open my eyes. Blah blah blah. Well, it came to a point where I told the parent that if he did not stop, I would ask him to leave, and if he did not leave the game was over and everyone goes home. Thankfully he shut up. But I will never forget how insane some parents get over their kids' games. I referee hockey. I once had a guy who brought a bag full of ping pong balls and started to throw them at the other team's players. When an employee of the arena came to throw him out of the rink, he dumped all of the ping pong balls on the ground and started running. It wasn't just one parent. It was all of them watching a particular game. I didn't referee any differently this game. But none of them could handle the fact that because I also played soccer I'd let a little physical contact go. They wanted me to call a penalty every single time one player touched another. It's soccer. People. Contact happens. I finally had to stop the game. All over both coaches. And tell them to calm down their parents or I would send them all to their cars, something I was well within my rights to do. They calmed down. Or at least grumbled low enough that I couldn't hear. And the kids finished the game. One of the parents took the issue to the league officials. I explained what happened. And they told me I was correct. I started reffing basketball when I was 16. So needless to say, adult coaches had a hard time trusting a kid. I've had several experiences that I have had to eject a parent or coach. However, 2 events stick out for me. This game was in a select tournament, summer ball, and the losing team's coach was giving us attitude all game. We had tried to be patient because his team of 6th graders was losing by 40. Finally he started cussing out my cubicle, which is an automatic technical. No big deal. It didn't affect the outcome at all. After the game, he came over to me while I was changing out of stripes to threaten to have his boys to come over and take care of me in the parking lot. Keep in mind I was 17 at the time. He followed me out to the parking lot to have a talk. The police were called and he had a report filed against him. The second incident came a couple of weeks later. About 45 seconds into the game, a dad from the stands begins berating for not making a call on a play that he believed a travel occurred. Before I could even warn him, he was on the floor trying to attack me. 2 other dads had to restrain him and he was thrown out of the building. After the game, I was told the man was drunk at 2 in the afternoon at his daughter's 9th grade basketball game. On one of my youth hockey teams, my coach was also a doctor. In one game, Player on the other team ended up getting hit pretty badly and likely was concussed. So my coach went to look at him while the assistant coach took over. During the assistant coach's time in charge, we let up 2 goals to lose a 2-1 lead. I ended up losing 2-3. Now there was one parent who was known to have anger issues. And he was furious at the assistant coach for blowing the game, screaming at him from the stands, and loudly cussing at him. One of the other parents, a local police officer, defended the coach to him, only making the angry parent angrier. This escalated to some shoving and threatening in the lobby between 2 parents from the same team, in their own rink, in front of a crowd of the visiting team's parents and families. It would have escalated further if a parent from the other team hadn't told them to take it outside and stop being childish. Next weekend before another game, the angry parent gathered the rest of the parents, apologizing and breaking down into a sobbing mess, telling them he was going to therapy for his anger issues. According to my dad, this was by far the most awkward moment of his life. Played volleyball my whole life. And when you are in tournaments, players from other teams in the pool that aren't playing are assigned to be line judges, keep score, etc. When I was line judging when I was 16, I called a ball in and a parent in the crowd obviously disagreed with the call. How do I know? Because she spent the next 8 minutes yelling at me, calling me a cheater, saying I'm jealous of her boys, we beat them earlier. So not sure where that came from. Screaming that the tournament was rigged. I felt horrible for her kid who was obviously extremely embarrassed throughout the whole process. After the 8 minutes was up, and a warning from the ref, the lady was thrown out of the gym. She was later let back in. But Jesus Christ, she was off the charts. Obligatory not me but my aunt was the crazy parent. When my cousin played baseball, he'd always scream the entire game and was easily the loudest parent there. One game, the coach benched my cousin because he was having a very off day. Just was playing terribly. My aunt starts screaming at the coach to put him back in. He refuses. So she charged him and starting punching him. Other parents jumped in to stop her and she ended up fighting them as well. The police were called and she ended up spending a month in jail, paying several $1,000s, doing community service, and was banned from attending any sporting events. Fun times. I was about 8 years old watching my brother's hockey game, who was 13 at the time. He was playing in a tournament in a crappy Eastern Ontario town. It was a pretty heated match, where both teams' parents were yelling at each other throughout the game. Once the game finished, both group of parents funneled into the lobby where the shouting persisted. One of the players on our squad had lesbian parents. They looked exactly like how you would expect a Canadian lesbian hockey mom would look. One of the moms started shouting and pointing at a father from the opposing team. The father then proceeded to give the lesbian mom a right hook, knocking her to the ground. Chaos erupts and my dad quickly took the man into an enclosed room before he got killed. My father then explained to him that he hit a woman. The dad from the opposing was in shock as he thought he had hit a man. He ended up getting arrested shortly after. The good old days. I occasionally ref fencing tournaments and I have 2 fun memories. The first thing you need to know is that a lot of fencers will yell after every touch if there is even the slightest hint they could have gotten a point. There was a kid about 10 years old who was kinda obnoxious about it. Every touch he would scream. He went up by a solid margin before the other person figured out his game. The opponent just railed off like 8 points in a row to make it super close. It got to match point and they both moved forward and did this stupid swashbuckling thing that was disgusting from a form perspective. But the screaming kid ripped off his mask and yelled before looking at the lights to see he never actually hit his opponent. I called the point and his coach went ballistic. Threatened to have me disbarred, whatever that means. I told him what happened and that unless he wanted himself and his fencer removed from the venue he needed to calm down. I honestly expected him to hit me in the back with a chair when I turned to shake hands with the kids. There was a mixed age group tournament that had a kid who was like 15. Every touch he would wind up and beat the hell out of people. I issued a few warnings in his first match. One of my friends was his next opponent who took offense to him beating up on kids. My friend was a much better fencer. Every attack was parried and followed by an audible thwack. After like 4 of those, my friend told him that him hurting the kids ended there or he would make sure he couldn't fence the rest of the day. He complained that he was threatened, which I promptly ignored. I later found out his coach was telling him to fence like that to demoralize his opponents. I've never wanted to punch a coach more. I had a very large grown man threaten to beat me up because he disagreed with one of my calls at his kid's soccer game. I'm a 5'3" girl and getting paid like $6 an hour. His kid was 7. This was at a non-competitive IMCA league. Clearly something worth assaulting someone over, especially someone that isn't even shoulder height on you. Another time a 7-year-old child apologized to me over how his mom was acting. She was screaming and calling myself and the children on the opposing team names. Fun times. I refed 11-16-year-old games when I was 15-17. Being so close in age to the players, parents thought they could do whatever they wanted. Worst moment was, I believe, 15-year-old players while I was 17. Kid slide tackles a goalie who is already down covering the ball. Easiest red card call on the planet. Kid's teammate comes running up and starts cursing me out. Another easy decision to give a yellow and tell him he needs to stop talking or he's gone. 2. All of a sudden, a second kid's dad comes running onto the field, saying stuff about how he pays for his kid to play in this league. I can't do that. He's just supporting his teammate, etc. He gets all up in my face. So I start walking backwards telling him to please get off the field. He decided instead to threaten to punch me, again. I am 17 at the time. He just threatened to beat up a kid. So, I walked over to the coaches, said that I was threatened and so I had the right to cancel the game immediately. I got in my car and drove away while everybody was standing around confused. Ended up filing a report with the league. And I like that dad was banned from coming to his kids' games the rest of the season. I was a volunteer ref for one night only at the elementary school near my high school for floor hockey night. I live in Canada so we had some pretty hockey passionate kids and parents playing. Yes. Parents were allowed to play and high schoolers had to ref. Only one school staff was present. It was a disaster from the start. It was fine for the most part of the game when one little kid kicked in the puck. This one middle-aged dad was livid and yelled at me to disallow the goal. I told him it was a for fun game and I wasn't even keeping score and this resulted in like 5 parents screaming and 3 actually grabbed their kids and left. Coached for 20 plus years. Seen a lot of crazies. Mostly moms who think their kid should be the star and wonders why they are on the sidelines. Once I was coaching my youngest son's basketball team. A bunch of 5-6-year-olds. We were playing a really bad team. 4 of the kids were terrified and had no idea what to do with the ball. One of the parents of our team was helping to coach on this day, his choice. Not mine. On the court. Every time the other team got the ball, he screamed for our boys to steal the ball. As 5-year-olds would do. He pretty much tackled the other team's kid and stole the ball. Went down and scored. Every parent, mostly on our team, was telling him to chill out. He kept on. At the end of the game, I, as head coach, said to him we need to talk. He blew up. Right in the middle of the gym. With room full of 5-year-olds and their parents. He is in my face screaming that his little Johnny isn't going to grow up to be a pathetic loser. His words. But a winner. And he will be damned. Blah blah blah, lots of curse words for about 5 minutes. Not giving me a moment to retort. Parents were covering kids' ears and hurrying them out. I had never seen a parent lose it like that before or since. I used to referee amateur rugby league when I was about 15 for 2 years. Mostly it was easy and fun and keeping the players in line when they were say U12 level was actually pretty simple. However, one time I was asked to referee for a U18 sevens tournament and got real, though not with a parent. I blew the whistle for offside. In rugby league this means the defending team are not getting back 10 meters after a tackle has been made. Mostly it's laziness, but it's also cheating, so you take them 10 meters further back and bring the tackle count back to 1 if they are taking the. One of the players, much bigger than me, took exception and started mouthing off and swearing that I was a little and didn't know what I was doing. That earned him a penalty and 10 meters more, with the warning that if he spoke another word to me in dissent he'd take his team back even further to their try line and have to defend all 6 tackles. This time he squared up to me, and because he was 2 years older and much bigger, I started to break my pants a little. Fortunately, his parents saved me from a surefire headbutt by dragging him off the field. His team conceded a try and the next set ended lost in the game. In my match report I noted the excellent behavior of the grown-up dad and the players' behavior towards me. To me off riffing the older kids. This parent started yelling that he wanted his players to attack and injure the opposing players. This was a U10 girls soccer game, and then he got into a fight with the opposing coach. He threatened to beat him up and was attempting to come onto the pitch, but other parents were holding him back. I spoke to the coach of the parents' team and told him to kick the fan out, as I am not allowed to. And then things started to calm down. Fan ended up apologizing after the game. But still, majority of the time, kids are more mature than their parents. I was an umpire for a small town and I had been doing this for 4 years at the time. Most of us were high school or college students, and at the time I had the most experience besides the guy who ran the league at umpiring. Because of this I normally had the more aggressive teams, angry parents and coaches, since I knew how to handle it. So, about the 3rd inning of the game that I had that day, the entire visiting team side started screaming at me saying my striker zone was unfair and too large. This was a 10U baseball game, so the strike zone was bigger than it would be for any other level of baseball where I'm from. At one point a parent coach storms onto the field and starts ripping into me saying he'll have a word with my boss about favoritism of the home team. Blah blah. Both teams were from a different city, so I didn't listen too much to him. After the next batter struck out for that team, the coach came out and decided to film me. I'm okay with this because it'll make him look stupid later on when he sees that the strike zones are the same. This goes on for about 2 innings before the coach approaches me after 1 inning to show his proof. He got into my face yelling and shoving. I just looked at him, smiled, and said very loudly, "You ray out of here." This got the parents very angry at this point as well, and they started swearing at me as well. Keep in mind this is a 10 years and younger game. So, at this point I kick the entire fan section out. Best part is that my boss saw the whole thing go down and said I did the right thing. Too long, didn't read. I kicked out an entire team's crowd because my strike zone wasn't MLB standard for 10-year-olds and didn't get in trouble. Refereed a U10 House League soccer game. It was a gold medal game. Still U10 House League nonetheless. I had made an iffy call. That was correct, but it raised a lot of commotion among the parents because it was something to do with a penalty. I can't recall the exact event. The game was still in play when the volunteer parent coach came onto the field and yelled at 13-year-old me and told me that I was doing a horrible job and she demanded a new ref. I just walked off the field and started packing my bag to leave. Because as a ref, if anyone does anything like that, you are allowed to up and leave. The assistant coach pulled her off the field and apologized to me and asked me to keep riffing the game. I did. For the kids. She came and apologized to me after. And told me that I had made the right call. I told her I knew that I did and walked away. 13-year-old me was savage. Me no spell and grammar. I played softball from the time I was 5 to 19. Lots of crazy softball dads living vicariously through their daughters. The one that sticks out happened our first game of the season. And it started when a girl, who was talented but an emotional wreck under any sort of pressure, hits a ground ball like any other to short. She's out at first. When she walks back to the dugout, father, the head coach, takes her bat and says she's not allowed to use it anymore. Because he didn't spend $300 for her to ground out. I heard the entire interaction because I was catching. He made her use one of the league provided bats for the rest of the game, which are too small and beat to hell. Naturally she plays worse. So next he takes away her helmet and makes her use the league provided one, which is nasty and never fits anyone. Then he made her play without her face mask in the infield. Girl is fighting Tez the entire time and is making mistakes left and right, and he's continuing to belittle her. At D yelling out loud that next he'll take away her TV privileges, or she won't be able to go to some outing next weekend. Her teammates say nothing. The other parents say nothing. We were all 10 to 12 years old. It was just awful. My dad was my head coach then, and I remember him pulling aside a couple of parents on their team afterwards. That coach was ended up replaced and his daughter was still allowed to play. But he later had to be banned for heckling his own child from the sideline when she made mistakes. I never saw her again after that. I'm not surprised if she quit sports altogether. It was disgusting to watch.